Hello everyone, and welcome to The Man Behind the Curtain. I'm Randy Young, the guy in the red shoes, and I've been in the video production business my entire career, and it's taken me around the world a few times. But more importantly, I've had the opportunity to work with some of the most creative people in television, and boy do they have stories to tell about the business and the people who make it happen. We've always been told, ignore the man behind the curtain, but you can talk to me. Okay, let's get started. With me is Manny Treeson, lighting designer extraordinaire. I've known him for a long time, and he's going to help explain what good lighting design is. Hi, Manny.
Well, hi, Randy.
How are you?
I'm good.
Okay, let me start out the way I usually start out with. Give me the short version of who you are, where you started, and how you got here.
I started out in theater. I fell into doing broadcast television because I met someone who took a shine to me, asked me to come assist them. I did that for a fairly long period of time, worked on some really great shows as an associate, and then got my opportunity to light shows for broadcast. And somewhere along the line, at about the same time, roughly, this was probably 10, 15 years into my career, corporate theater was doing more and more shows with screens, and they wanted better camera sensitive lighting for corporate shows, so someone recommended me to do the odd corporate show. And once people got to know that I knew how to light for camera and I was a reasonably pleasant human being to be around for 12 to 16 hours a day, I started getting more of that work, and that was appealing to me at the time. It was interesting, and I mixed it with my broadcast work. And as a career changes, you do a little more of X and a little more of Y, and everything kind of weaves together. And that sort of gets you to a place where probably about 15 years ago, I started doing more themed entertainment to mix in with the broadcast, the corporate, and then the live spectacle work I do. And it's just all sort of been the career, really.
What do you find is the major difference between corporate theatrical work and broadcast?
More consideration for the audience in the room. It depends on the piece of corporate theater you're doing. Also, often when I do a piece of corporate theater, I find, especially if I'm doing like a product launch, we'll spend more time talking about it. Because in the case of launching a new technological device, be it a phone, a laptop, a gaming hardware console, it's a pretty major marketing moment for that company you're working for. So a lot of people care an awful lot about the specific pictures you're making, because those pictures are valuable beyond words for their marketing efforts. So that you become like part of their marketing team for a little while. So I think we spend more time at it. Whereas sometimes broadcast can be, we need you to go light some concert. It's Wednesday, we load in on a Saturday, and you shoot it on Sunday to Monday, and you're done.
Yeah, it's get in there, slip it in, get it done.
Yeah.
Okay. Does your lighting style change because of that?
100%.
How so?
The criteria changes. So I'll give you one very specific example, but it's true across the board. So if we're doing like a product launch, I'm lighting not for one camera. So if I'm doing a live broadcast event, let's say something for a network, I have control of all the cameras. There are cameras. We have 8 cameras, we have 16 cameras, we have 21 cameras, whatever we have. I see them all, I know what they're all going to do.
Sure.
If I light a product launch or with a lot of live press in the room, we have 10 cameras, whatever we have as part of the launch, but in addition we have 300 cameras in the room that are recording the event. So I need to create something that is safe for them to capture, that I'm not using a weird color temperature. Like often if I'm doing a product launch, I'll pick a preset color temperature. I'll say we're at 5600.
Sure.
As opposed to saying, oh, I would prefer to be at 4950, which I might like if I had control of all the cameras. But if I don't, because I'm going to put up signs around the arena, around the theater saying this is what the color temperature is, this is what the exposure is, so that I can ensure that all the other independent cameras, be whatever outlet they're from, gets the best picture as possible, because that's part of our responsibility, is sort of to service that.
So you really do light to temperature.
Yes.
And work with the video guys to make sure that temperature's
somewhere along
recorded.
my career, I started, and I think you know this from the shows we've done together, paying more attention not only to the cameras we have, but paying attention to everything in the venue that emits light. So if it's an LED screen, if it's a product screen. So I will actually spend time with the product developers or the people demoing products to make sure their screens on stage are exposed as well. So I will often turn down or suggest, which is usually a harder conversation, that we reduce the brightness of what is, a very high nit level, a very high output laptop screen. They're usually very proud, and rightfully so, of how bright and how much contrast their new laptop, their new slate device or a phone can produce. But if we're lighting down so the executive demoing the device is comfortable, and we have a good balance with our background and all of that, all of a sudden the screen can overexpose. So everything must be in order, everything must be in balance, because I think we all know that cameras don't care if something looks really good if it's outside the dynamic range it can capture.
Right.
So we have to find that balance. So,
speaking of balance, how about the balance between, we're sitting behind the screens right
Sure.
now, backstage, but the front of the screens emit a light temperature, and you have to try and balance that. I know for years that wasn't even thought about.
no, but it's definitely something that when the producers of the show we're doing now brought me on board, they had worked with me, one of the producers, Carolyn, had worked with me on Xbox. I lit Xbox press events for many years. And she knew that that was something I did, so I specifically asked to be hired here so that I could think about those things, so I can create that dynamic. And often what you have to do is keep in mind also how you shade a human. How do you expose human beings, their flesh, that it looks healthy? And then how do we make sure that the images behind them read true to the client? Because again, when you're doing corporate theater, and as well as doing broadcasts, the images need to feel true. We don't want to create anything that feels distracting or artificial unless that's intentional. There's always rules are meant to be broken. But if what we're intending to do is represent an image behind, say it's the device screen in an image format showing something, it wants to feel true. And the person in front needs to feel healthy. So if, for example, the screen was set for 5,600 degrees Kelvin, the person's lit 5,600 degrees Kelvin, logic would tell us that those both things would be in balance with each other. But I think we know that they're not, because a human being exposed perfectly white feels sickly, because they feel like they're lit cold and they don't feel warm and natural. So obviously when a video, all of our collaborators, so in order to do the things we're talking about, it's not just me spinning all the knobs, obviously not. There is an army of people, from the LED screen techs to the video shaders to the EIC to yourself to all the cameramen, that all have to be walking together and dancing together to make a good image. And so knowing that a video shader is going to add a little warmth to human skin so they feel alive and healthy, we have to think about, we don't want to make the screen look red and ruddy. So we have to cool that screen off, so it's finding that balance.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance to find. And you have to work with the engineers back in Video Village and make sure that they're tuning their cameras correctly.
Well, luckily, we all have worked together on all these shows quite a lot. So all the engineers and I know each other. We start our show, we have a conversation where we say, so where are you going to set your white point? And I'll say, I think we should set the screen at 6,000. We should set people at 5,100 degrees. I'll put a little more magenta into the light. And when I say magenta, I mean just a little bit of pink. Just a little breath of pink, just to give them a little more warmth, to help not create as much offset, but the screen can then naturally cool down so white feels white, and etc. And we have a formula and we talk about it, and then we all know what our steps in the dance are.
But you also grew up through projection too.
Yes.
And what a nightmare that could have been.
Well, it's especially if even to this day, we have laser projection now, and lasers read incredibly cool. I never want to have a laser projection on a show with broadcast if I can avoid it. Because it's just a weird refresh rate. It feels brittle on camera to me. I don't feel like old school projection feels warm and buttery, and all the pixels blend together, and it's a lovely thing. But current laser projection, while it looks great to the naked eye, because the refresh rate of cameras and all that stuff can feel, to me, it can feel cold and brittle and not full spectrum.
I think that's part of the problem that I see with the screens today, the LED screens, and they're getting better. They're getting smaller, they're getting tighter. they tend to look, unless they're really designed well, they tend to look flat to me, and they carry no depth. And I just want more depth in the screens.
Well, I think part of that is on us as designers to make choices where we're not just creating scenery that is one plane.
Mm-hmm.
So when we got really high caliber LED screens and we could have theatrical lighting on in front of a image surface and not be worried about the light that's laying a person blowing at the surface behind,
Right.
everyone said, well, that's great. We have an infinite flexible canvas. We don't need anything but a screen and a human being.
Right.
Well, intrinsically, that is a flat situation. It is sort of like a stand-up comedy show. We've got our brick wall, and we've got a
Right.
mic, and we've got a person in front of that brick wall, and it can feel, and a camera does naturally, wouldn't you say, compress an image.
Yes, it does.
It takes something that has dimension and naturally flattens it out.
out.
Yeah. So because of all that, if we create a flat thing to begin with and then the camera does what it does, we're not in good shape.
No.
So we have to do two things. We have to create dimensionality on stage so that, like if we have a jib, like we have in the show at JITA, as it moves, we understand that these planes have a dimensional relationship with each other, and it's not just a flat plane. And then we need to collaborate with our video art creation teams so that they create images that have depth and richness and positive and negative space. So again, we create more of an illusion of depth. And I think that's critical.
I've been a big proponent of depth and foreground, background in all of my years of shooting things. And I think it's vitally important because you're right, the camera flattens things out. And there's nothing worse than that on a stage. You're flattening the stage out.
And then you don't have parallax, right? So a little while ago, there was a show that I think most people are familiar with called The Mandalorian.
Right.
And they shot that in front of an LED wall.
Right.
But what they did very cleverly is built all of their visual scenery in Unreal Engine, and then they built it in 3D, and they connected that 3D engine in real time to the camera system, so that when they moved a camera, the various elements or layers within that 3D world would move in
Cross.
parallax. So it totally created that illusion of three-dimensionality. Whereas if all you do is create a flat 3D image, it's still 3D, but it's on a flat plane. And when you move the camera, the illusion of depth disappears because things don't move in relation as they would to a camera.
The background doesn't move.
Yeah.
You're just looking at it from a different angle, and it's still the same.
Yeah, exactly. But if you built in three-dimensional parallax,
Right.
all of a sudden the sky moves much slower because it's much farther away. The foreground objects or the midground objects are moving much faster, and all of a sudden that works the way things do in real life. And then no one even knew they shot it on an LED wall when they first began. They thought they built all that scenery.
Was the concept that it was going to be more cost effective?
The concept was that it was going to be more cost effective for them to do fantastic things, which it was.
Yes. All right. Let's talk about our shows a little
Okay.
bit. And you get a call from a producer.
Mm-hmm.
Assume that you know them, you've worked with them before, so you say yes.
Mostly that's what the case is, yeah.
What's your next step?
Well, figure out what the creative is before, because I shouldn't do anything until there's a creative structure to the show. So we need to find out, I need to get involved with the process and know what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So once I understand creatively where the show is at that moment and what we're trying to do, then I can contribute and collaborate with the scenic design, the producers and the content creators to help inform the whole process, help sort out what kind of screens we want, because often that's what I'm doing. I'm picking the screen product and the video media server product and all those things. That's part of my relationship with most projects. And then help assemble those teams. But before you can do all that, you need to know creatively where you're going and why you're going there. I think the why is the most important thing.
Right.
Because the what can be informed as you go down the path of the journey.
But you have to know where you're going.
We have to know why we're going there, where we're going and why we're going there.
Right.
Because if someone says to me, I want to create an in-arena spectacle, we're going to capture it with the camera, but that's not primary. I want the in-room effect to be X, and that's more important. It creates a stress on a priority of what we're doing. someone says to me, the most important thing is that we create an in-camera successful show to do X, that becomes the priority. Often these days, people say we want to find a balance between those two things. Make the room good, but capture a really great show.
Capture a really great show. That inevitably certainly leads to some creative discussions, creative disagreements perhaps, creative style changes, your look versus their look.
I try not, I mean, hopefully I don't know that I've really found any disagreements in that context. I think there's give and take. And collaboration is about having a conversation. And if someone has an idea and you have a slightly different variation on that idea, it's nothing wrong to have that conversation. And then you settle somewhere.
Right.
And I think that natural process makes the whole show better. It's not combative, there's not a disagreement, it's just a collaborative conversation about what you're doing. And often everyone has life experience that has informed where they are. And if you're listen, and you go, okay, so this person is saying X, Y, and Z because they had this show experience or they have this experience with whatever the effort is we're doing, like that has tremendous value. And you have to hear that and think about it and then think about why you have a different opinion and then figure out that, okay, well, that makes sense.
That makes sense. You can
and
do
you
it
learn
that
from
way.
that.
Sure.
And life is, no one knows everything.
Right.
And you figure it out.
Yeah.
And the fun is actually, I've often said what we do in life is sort of like playing jazz. You don't always know exactly where the song is going to go, but you can listen to your partners sitting around the band and listen to what they're laying down,
Right.
and then pick up that rhythm a little bit, and then do your own little rhythm, and they listen to you, and then you're having this sort of dynamic and conversation.
You
and
play into them, they play into you.
Exactly, and then the result can be something really rich and better than the sum of its parts.
Sure.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the business of this business. How has it changed for you since you got into it?
Everything's a business. Specifically, it's an ecosystem. So everyone in the ecosystem needs to be healthy. So if a producer wants to do a show and a client's hiring the producer to do a show, and if vendors are going to be hired to provide equipment and people and services to support that show, at the end of the day, everyone needs to be comfortable with the financial side of it and feel good about it and have it be worth it. There's no one can sort of do this work essentially for, for the experience of it. It's not like we're doing this for college credit.
That's correct.
And so if you're lucky and you work with the same vendors all the time and the same producers all the time, which I happen to be, everyone knows we need to keep everyone healthy. I'm not saying it's all in balance, right? It's not disproportionate, but what you need to do is be aware that if you want to do a certain size show, that comes with a certain cost of trucking and gear and people to mount a show of a certain scale. And if you don't have that sort of base wherewithal financially on a given show, no harm, no foul. Let's reconstruct the show in a way that meets the financial budget to make the producer healthy, because the producer needs to be healthy and the client needs to be happy with the result.
And that's where your expertise comes in early on. When you say yes to a show, you certainly have to evaluate all of those aspects of the show.
But I don't say yes to the show based on budget, personally. Or I don't say yes to a show based on, I start out with first, can I bring enough time to the process to help make it successful?
Right.
And will I be calm and collective trying to be part of that process, or am I taking on too much? That's the first question I ask for myself.
Sure.
And then the next question is, it's like, what are we trying to do? And what means do we have? And if those things feel like they're reasonably balanced, great. If they feel out of proportion, I won't say no. I'll just simply say, I think that either the budget or the desires we need to talk about them.
Right.
And then if there's like, no, we must have all of X and it has to cost this much, and if it doesn't work, then I'll say politely that I don't know if that's going to be successful, but I can't think of a time where I've done that in recent years.
It's been a long time for me to have had that problem.
Yeah, mostly it's about figuring out, do I have the time to do it, really,
Right.
when I say yes to a show.
Let's talk about experience. You and I have been around the block a few times.
A few times, sure.
When was the last time that you worked with anybody less than your age? A 25-year-old, a 30-year-old? I think we have a problem bringing younger people into this business.
We can be in an aging business, but I don't think that's true. Lighting tends to be a younger person's business. When you get to be our age, let's just say it. We're not
climbing ladders anymore.
Well, there's not only that. We're no longer the flavor of the month. We're not the hot young thing, and that's okay. We're comfortable. We're the known quantity.
Right.
And as I say, I work with the same 3 or 4 producers all year long. So it's not, for me anyway, it's a fortunate spot to be in. It's not like I'm out there hitting the boards, looking for work.
Down doors looking for work, right?
Some months are more busier than others, and that's just fine.
Right.
Life is somewhere about 10 years ago. I decided I wanted to work so I could live well,
right,
and enjoy life, as opposed to live so I can work. You live to work or work to live.
Right.
And that often changes when you age and you decide you want a better work-life balance, right, and you just try to.
Well, we all, my experience in talking to people in these little podcasts I've been doing, is that we all backed into the business. You came from theater, I came from broadcast television. You have broadcast television in your history. And it's different for everyone. We all have different experiences, but it's amazing how they all come together and form a bond for the week that we're together and make something happen.
Totally. And look, I don't think anyone, when they're 6 years old and they look up at the night sky, say to themselves, one day, I want to light a new phone launch. That is probably not the thing.
Yeah.
I want to be an astronaut. I want to.
Right. I want to be a fireman. I want
whatever, or I want to be in theater. I want.
Right.
This is where we start, but I don't want to take anything away. I don't want to sound like I'm being derogatory to the corporate theater work we do, because I find it, different shows have different challenges.
Right.
You should always find, like the show we're doing right now. The challenge here was how to we had a couple performance pieces that were very powerful,
right,
but they were very minimal. And the instinct always is to add more cues, to do more things. And sometimes you need to know when to lay
enough
back.
is enough, and lay back and let it work.
Let it work and decide because I once had a buddy say, a lot of us in the design field, we're not the primary artist. I'm not a lighting artist in the concept of, I'm not conceiving of an art installation and building an art installation and putting it into a museum. That's not what I'm doing. We're not the primary artist. We are a reactive artist. We're an artist, but we're reactive, and we're paying attention to what the primary art is. What is the primary thing we're doing? And then knowing, this probably comes with age, when it wants 600 light cues and when it wants 2.
Right.
Because 2 can be more powerful than 600.
Where is the business that we're in? Where is this business going? Do you think it's going to change as much as it has in the last 10? In the next 10?
In the past 5 years, because of the pandemic and so many areas, it's gone through 3 or 4 changes already. We all went to virtual for a while. In the middle of the pandemic, I was lighting corporate theater from my office, looking at video signals over Zoom, and trying to evaluate them before they went out to a larger audience, and people were hermetically sealed everywhere. And then we started having meetings again and coming together and doing shows like this. But I don't think it's come back in the same bombastic way as it was before. It used to be. It's not good, it's not bad, but prior to the pandemic, there was more appetite for what I would refer to as corporate spectacle.
Sure.
I would do these elaborate gaming shows that were massive in scale and scope and had tremendous visual impact. They wanted this sort of rich, dynamic visual tapestry. Mm-hmm. And I think the desire for that has ebbed a little bit as the people wanted shorter load-in periods, slightly less complicated executions, and that's fine. That became part of the criteria. How do we get in, do what we need to do, service the end goal, whatever that is, and not overcomplicate the machine. And I think in a lot of ways, that's the current state of affairs, and there's less of these corporate shows than there were 5 years ago. I don't think it's going to stay there. I think as people feel the need to make an impression, they're always going to look for a way to do it. there's a natural desire to put on a show. I think this is in the human nature. People want to tell a story. They want people to know what their story is, whatever that is, whether it's the launch of a new product, whether in case of what we're doing here is we're gathering together to talk about a particular subject. People want to gather, I mean, since we had fires and circles of people at night, they want to gather around and tell stories.
Right.
And I don't know that that ever changes. The venue for it changes.
I think the venue and the format change, but the fact that you want to tell a story, you want to deliver a message in the corporate sense,
Yeah.
that still remains, and that the gathering is still an important factor to the corporations and the sharing of knowledge.
Sharing of knowledge, but also from an impact point of view, I think the virtual show where one person stands in front of a video screen in a wraparound set and delivers a message to 1 or 5 cameras, and that gets packaged and sent out on the internet. With one exception, that tends to be incredibly dry.
Yes.
People try to do it, and then they don't get a lot of response from it because they don't have a live audience. There's no sense of occasion or moment.
Right.
And without that sense of occasion,
it's just watching another TV show.
It's an infomercial
that you can walk away from and
join again later. Yeah. There is a thing about live that has intrinsic attention. Right. This is an event, whatever the event is, whether it's a football game, a soccer game, baseball game, or a live corporate launch, or a live concert, or anything that's literally live, that it feels like this is a real moment and it's happening right now, and that creates a sense of occasion and attention. And I think just recording something in a studio loses that power.
I think in the sense of the meetings now and in the next year or two, they're tending to be more efficient. They're looking for more efficiencies, but they still want the wow of it.
Well, yeah, and because when you do a live show, whether you're doing a live show for an audience or you're recording and sharing it wide, there is the possibility of the unknown, the unexpected, the real moment, because there it is. Often when you pre-record and you package something, it's too perfect, it's too tight, it is too controlled.
Way too controlled, yes.
And when you shoot something live, I'll give you an example. Years ago, I'm doing an Xbox thing. We're debuting Rock Band for the very first time, and the head of Xbox at the time was a guy named Peter Moore. And he's playing the Rock Band guitar. Right. Someone else is doing drums. We had the whole kit. They're doing the whole thing. And on the guitar neck, there was, he has all the controller buttons, but he also has a button that pauses it. So we're outdoors in Santa Monica. We have a big set, lots of lights, lots of video screens, and he's playing Rock Band, and it's a big rock and roll kind of moment. And in the middle of this huge, loud environment in front of 1,000 people, he hits the pause button by accident. And all the music, because it was a live demo, goes cold. Everything stops. Right, graphics stop, everything stopped, and all the lights are still going because we're playing along. And he looked around and goes, "My bad, I hit pause." And he counts everyone back in, unpauses the game, and they keep playing. And it happened one more time. What people later wrote about that, everyone laughed, and it happened more and more times apparently on the show floor of E3, and it became known as pulling a Peter Moore, which was kind of funny. He owned it and smiled about it, and it was a live moment. It also meant the demo was live, it wasn't canned, because it wasn't. But it wasn't deliberate what happened, it was accidental. Right. But it became a viral moment that went out.
Absolutely.
And it's like, this happened. I was there, I saw the thing happen, I saw Peter hit pause. He did it more than once.
You can't duplicate that.
No.
You really can't.
No.
And that's the glory of live. And live television has always been my, as I like to say, my drug of choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you never know what's going to happen.
Especially live music, it's great on camera.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's, people are really playing, and the cats are cooking, they're doing their thing, and you're shooting around, you're lighting it, it's great. Yeah.
Well, I got to say, this has been great. I've learned a lot. I think it's been informative as any of these can be, and I appreciate you being part of it. Thanks, man.
My pleasure. Thanks.